At the heights of a gambling addiction, I had lost $12,000 in less than 24 hours. In a span of 4 years, I had lost over $140,000. I lost assets from vehicles to houses, you name it. I compromised a lot of things I once had stood for, from a value perspective, from a moral perspective. And honestly, during that time of addiction, I put myself at the center, and kind of everything else in life kind of just had to go on the back burner. And that's how addiction works for a lot of people. You become self-centered and the addiction kind of can run the show. My last video, I talked about the addiction itself and how I got into a gambling addiction. This video, I kind of want to talk about what I learned from overcoming an addiction. I believe a smart person can learn from their own mistakes, and a wise person can learn from someone else's mistakes. So maybe me telling my story can help someone going through addiction, or someone who maybe has a problem that could be leading to that. Maybe a few things I learned could help someone. I believe if you go through something difficult in life, there's always some lessons to learn, because otherwise it's like, well, what's the point of going through it if I didn't learn anything from it? I should have a few gems I can take away from each situation I go through in life, no matter how big or little it is. And those lessons, they often are what shape our psychology, our lens through which we see the world moving forward. So one of the first things I really learned from overcoming addiction was, honestly, I'm grateful. And in the past, I used to kind of say I was grateful for this or that. And a lot of times it would I just knew I needed to say it. But I'm honestly really just grateful. When you overcome an addiction that you battle with for so many years, you just have to become grateful on a different level, not just mentally, but actually feeling those emotions of gratitude. As mentioned in the last video, people with gambling addictions, they have some of the highest ideations of suicide. So you can combine that aspect of it also with just people going through financial hardship. That also is one of the highest causes as well. So it reminds me of a story that just happened not too long ago, less than a week ago. After me recording that first video, it literally happened since then. And a family friend, he recently passed away, and it was self-inflicted. And one of the reasons he passed away was, or he just felt like he didn't have hope, I believe, was the backstory is just financial hardships. He just felt like he wasn't maybe progressing or couldn't get a grip on his finances. And one of the sad things about it is he leaves behind a young son who is only about 7 or 8 years old. And, that's a very sad thing, I believe. Condolences to his family. I'm not going to share the person's name out of respect for their family. But it just made me think about, I already had a few things jotted down on the list I want to talk about. And, gratitude has to be at the front. I'm glad I was able to overcome that addiction and overcome those mental and emotional struggles that you encounter when you do have an active addiction. And, you have to be grateful. A lot of people, they don't make it out of their addiction battle, whether it be means of self-harm or whether it be, a means of overdosing. A lot of people, I think last time I looked at it, over 100 people pass away a day from addiction. Maybe they overdose or something like that. So I'm grateful my addiction, it was behavior related and not substance related, because there's no telling where I would be if I had an actual substance addiction. So, and then I'm just grateful that I was able to overcome it. I'm here today to tell my story to people about my trials and tribulations. And I'm really honored to be able to do that because, like I said, a lot of people, they don't make it out. So another thing I learned is just to be very humble. I don't have much of an ego anymore. I'm really just grateful, and I try to stay humble. I have a lot more empathy and sympathy for people. Whereas before, I see people sometimes online where they talk about people's trials and tribulations and stuff like that, kind of make fun of people or whatever. It's always fun and games when it's other people. It's always funny. And then when they go through something, now it's a different story. And I was kind of the same way. I would often make fun of people or, just laugh about stuff, somebody else's trials or tribulations or, their decisions in life and stuff like that. But now I kind of see things differently. I try not to judge people at all because, you don't want to be judged. When you're going through your go-throughs in life, you don't really want to be judged. You're already feeling bad about yourself and the decisions you made. And, seeing people make fun of you or see people talk about you in a negative manner, that kind of just intensifies what you're already feeling, what you're already thinking. And that's something that can lead people, into a worse place than they already are in. And yeah, when you talk about, so empathy and sympathy, they're two different things. Sympathy is kind of just like, you may have an understanding of what somebody's going through. But that empathy, that's when you really can feel it. You can really put yourself in your shoes and feel what they feel. And that's for me, and that's what I experience now. I don't really judge the person on the corner anymore. I don't judge the homeless person. I don't know what type of traumas they have been through. Sure, you can say, oh, they're grown. If they, they can overcome it, or that's their choice. It's America and all this stuff. But, a lot of people, I kind of look at it differently now. We all have traumas we have went through. People have mental health issues. Their psychology is different. Everybody's brain works differently. So I just try to be more understanding now and less judgmental. Have a lot more empathy for people because we are all humans. Everyone has their own problems, and I just feel like one of my missions and purposes in life is to help people get through those problems. Help people and resonate with them on their problems because that's where we often can connect at. Like I dislike bullying and stuff like that. I often used to, bully people or talk, not really just bully people physically, but, like talk about people and stuff like that growing up in school days. If you talked about a person, if you could be a funny person by talking about other people, you kind of got like cool points for that or whatever. And I think about people I talked about, and people's feelings I hurt. And it's like, why do you do that? Why do we have to do that? I try to tell my son that now, just about like not talking about people, even the kids. I volunteer with some at-risk teens here in my state. I do that on a weekly basis. And I talk to them also anytime I hear one of them talking about somebody else. One of the other people in there, making fun of them or whatever. I just try to talk to them and pull them to the side like, why do you have to talk about somebody? What voids are you missing that you have to talk about somebody to make you feel better about yourself? And I just try to teach people to, pour into people. You never know what somebody else is going through. And all it takes is for they're already going through something and then you're talking about people and stuff like that. And now that's what it takes for them to be pushed over the edge. So that's just something I try to live by myself and something I try to preach also and instill into other people. So another thing I learned is until you conquer your demons, they aren't just going to leave themselves. Another one is, until you get that monkey off your back, the monkey is going to be there. It's not just going to jump off its back on its own. So what does that mean? It means that you have to face your problems. You have to face all those things, all that trauma, all those bad decisions you made, all that lack of self-worth, lack of self-love. Like you have to really get down to a core of it all and be able to overcome stuff. Because if you lack the self-love, if you lack the self-worth, you will continue to stay in a cycle where you continually self-sabotage. You steadily demonstrate the behavior of self-sabotaging. You may do good for a little bit if people help you, or you may even choose to do good yourself for a little bit, but eventually you will return back to the state where you do stuff that compromises the direction you want to be going in life. And you have to get it under control, or you won't be able to overcome addiction, or you won't be able to, not even just addiction related, you won't be able to progress and become the person you want to become. Like if you have vices, Like if you have all those internal problems that you're not dealing with, you will continually look for ways to fill that void. You will look for ways to escape. And in a world today where everything is like, no matter what your vice is, like mine was gambling, like that stuff, you can't watch a sports game nowadays without them talking about gambling, or download the link here, or get one free this or that, all this different stuff, like casinos and stuff like that. Like all that stuff, there are engineers and stuff who design how can they keep you in there. There's a reason there's not clocks on the wall at a casino. They give you complimentary beverages and all this stuff. Like you don't think that they're going to be designing they design these games and stuff, these slot machines at these casinos, so that you get there and you're hooked. They're going to only improve on them. Same with social media, same with like women. Like there's always going to be women out there. You can't be trading like short-term gratification. That's what it comes down to. Quit seeking short-term gratification. If you have a problem with your core and who you are as a person, and you're not a whole person, you will always be seeking out short-term gratification. It may be substances, it may be alcohol. Like you have to get to a point where you don't need anything. You have so much self-love for yourself, and you love who you are enough and have so much self-worth that you no longer need external stuff. You realize, I can generate the love that I need. I don't need to go get it externally. Even food, for example, like you have to be disciplined enough that if you get some type of trigger, mental, emotional thing, that you don't need to go eat unhealthy food. That's why a lot of times, especially in America, we become, so overweight as a nation. It's because people, that's their addiction. They may not be addicted to drugs or gambling or anything like that, but food is their addiction. A lot of people don't realize food can be an addiction. It's the same reward pathway of a lot of the other stuff I'm talking about, gambling, substances, stuff like that. Like food can be the same way for people. But ultimately, a person has to develop enough self-love that they can be disciplined. They can have some self-control, because if you don't get it, a person they can stop one addiction and then they have something else unhealthy they're doing now. And that's not what you want to do. You don't want to go from one thing to another. A person has to get to a point where they don't have any unhealthy coping mechanisms. They do stuff in moderation. If they do want to do something, they can do it in moderation. They don't need to do it to escape reality. They don't need to do it to fill a void. Because if you continue to do that, you will always be demonstrating behavior that will make you not love yourself more. You can't even love people unconditionally that deserve to be loved in your life. Your family, your friends, people who love you and care about you. If you don't have the ability to love yourself, then you will continue to hurt other people. And that's not the energy and karma, I believe, a person wants to be putting out into the universe, because sooner or later, it's going to come back to you. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but eventually, I believe stuff comes back to you in one way or another. So those are some of the main things I want to talk about as far as what I learned from the addiction. The last video will be about how I was able to specifically overcome my gambling addiction. And that one is going to be maybe the most important one, because it's how I was able to personally overcome it. And maybe it's something someone else can use or gain some insight from. So comment below if you know someone or you yourself struggle with addiction. Comment below what are the most important things you believe you learned from it. Subscribe to the channel to become a part of the Vulnerable Tribe. This is where we will be talking about real life situation, all type of different aspects of life, and just on a progression to get better as people.